If we could change this script to, hi, mother or father of said child, I've noticed your child's having difficulty in class, and I'd really like to support them to help them have the best experience. And I'm wondering if you'd be available to work together with me so we can figure out what's going on and best support your child. Is there a time? Can we bring the child into the conversation so the three of us can sit down as a team?
Welcome to Rainbow Skies for Teachers, the go-to show dedicated to teachers who want to make a big difference in education. Whether you're in your first few years or well into your teaching career, we are here to inspire, support, and empower you with bite-sized tips, simple strategies, and the motivation to lead an education revolution, one classroom at a time.
We're Ashleigh and Alicia from Rainbow Sky Creations, two Aussie teachers who love all things teaching and learning. We are here to help you thrive as you work toward making an impact in your students' lives while loving your life as a teacher.
We are here to help you bring joy, simplicity, and creativity into your classroom on the daily, because
there are rainbows ahead, my friend, and together we're unstoppable.
Let's get into today's episode.
Rainbow Sky Creations acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Dharawal and Whadjuk Noongar people. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.
Hello, teacher friends. Welcome back to Rainbow Skies for Teachers. Today, we're diving into a conversation that every teacher needs to hear: how to support neurodivergent students in real, manageable, and meaningful ways in your classroom. We're joined by not one, but two guests, Lianne and Lisa from Elevated Educators. Now, Lianne is a psychologist and Lisa is an educator. So what a duo they are. They're here to help us change the game when it comes to practical inclusion strategies that work for both students and teachers. This is a great conversation, and I'm sure you are going to get so much out of it. So without further ado, introducing Lianne and Lisa. So ladies, let's start at the very beginning. Tell us, what is your definition of neurodiversity and why is it important for teachers to understand?
Neurodiversity is a more recent term. It's not a diagnostic term. It's a social justice movement more than neurodiversity movement. And what it is, it's an understanding that there are differences between individuals in how their brain and body is wired, what their needs are, and it recognizes these as differences, not deficits. There are strengths and challenges in different wirings and differences between people. The neurodiversity movement doesn't just miss challenges. It recognizes that those differences mean strengths and challenges, particularly for individuals whose needs, brain and body needs, are different to the dominant culture's needs. They will have less of those needs met in day-to-day life. And this can present challenges by living in a world that really isn't set up to support these differences. Something important to know is that students who are neurodivergent often have spiky profiles, a term psychologists use to refer to a pattern of strong strengths and notable weaknesses. Recognizing those strengths in a way that you can actually harness them to overcome some of the challenges. For example, if you look at autistic individuals, some of their strengths could be things like pattern recognition, a drive to understand deeply, intense interests, and curiosity. All of those things sound wonderful, but in a classroom can present challenges. For example, an autistic student who can be detail-focused and point out inconsistencies. It's not to undermine the teacher, but it can feel that way. And understanding this and actually harnessing well, they're good at understanding details and being detail focused, and then designing tasks and environments that support this without punishing those challenges. Another quite common form of neurodivergence is ADHD, and some strengths with ADHD is creativity, thinking outside the box, being able to learn things really quickly and deeply when they're engaged, when it's something that interests them. But when an ADHDer isn't engaged, doesn't see value, challenges show up. Understanding this can help support these individuals in having an environment that's more likely to meet their needs. Another important part of it is compassion, recognizing that things are tricky for students. They may be putting in effort, which isn't always noticeable or showing up in measurable results how the typical student would be showing their achievements or results.
I think teachers will be listening to this and nodding their heads saying, oh, I recognize those traits in this student or that student. There's one particular student that came to my mind when you were saying they often point out inconsistencies. I'm sure other teachers are feeling the same way. That's why we got you on today to have this discussion and to go a little bit more deeply into neurodiversity and the word of neurotypicals. Let's talk a bit about the terms neurodivergent and neurotypical for a second, because we hear those a lot more now. What's the difference, and how can these terms shape the way we view students in our classroom?
Neurodiversity refers to a person's whole mind, body, nervous system, processing system. When a person's mind and body needs aren't met by the dominant culture, that's what we refer to as neurodivergent. So diverging from needs of the dominant culture. So this could be things like autism, ADHD, learning differences, OCD, some of the things that I listed earlier. I used to be frustrated by the term neurotypical because I was like, what does that even mean? We're all individuals. But I recently learned a definition that sits better for me. Neurotypical is just when the dominant culture meets a person's needs. So what is being done mainstream meets a neurotypical person where they're at. Whereas neurodivergent individuals, what is already being provided may not necessarily meet them where they're at or provide for their needs. Every human has needs. And sometimes the term additional needs is also used as a different way of referring to neurodivergent students. It can be quite helpful to step back from that a bit and say it's not necessarily that they have additional needs, it's that they have different needs. And teachers will often be automatically catering to the needs of neurotypical students without too much thought. And I guess it's that idea of catering for the majority of the students with these things. Whereas putting more thought into it means that you can cater to a wider variety of needs without viewing them as additional needs, just needs.
If you're neurotypical yourself, it's going to be far easier to cater for the majority of the class. However, if you're neurodivergent, say you're a teacher, you'll have more of an understanding of how you can cater for those other students that also are neurodivergent. We can't just put a blanket on there and say, you know what, kids with ADHD, this is going to be helpful for them. Kids with autism, this is going to be helpful for them. I'd like to get into some of those strategies today.
Absolutely.
With the increasing pressure on teachers to be across every diagnosis, I do not envy teachers in the classroom because I find this overwhelming. And so far, how you've explained it has been really clear. And teachers, we don't need to know everything and no one expects you to know everything. That's why we have people like Lianne and Lisa on our podcast to build up your knowledge. It's hard when you just thrust into a classroom and you only have what your university taught you, and that might not cover any of this. So teachers are supposed to be across every diagnosis. They're supposed to know about ADHD, autism, sensory processing, all the things. Can we talk a little bit about the unrealistic expectation for teachers to be experts, in inverted commas, in this area?
It can be completely overwhelming. And we see it in our students, that complete overwhelm and inability to get started as a result of the overwhelm. Teachers can often throw their hands in the air and say, this is just too hard. I'm going to create a generic lesson plan, and those who can fit in will fit in. It's totally understandable why teachers land in that position. One being the feeling that you need to be an expert in every diagnosis and the nuances of that, which university, if you're lucky, touches on it. You do not leave feeling empowered to understand the nuance. In our work, not only is that not useful, it can actually be detrimental if teachers try really become experts in each of those diagnoses. Because what typically seems to happen, you could say, I have a student with ADHD. ADHDers typically struggle with focus or are impulsive. And then you could apply the same 5 strategies that you have up your sleeve for ADHD to every ADHDer in your classroom. And you could still be missing the mark, because for each individual with that diagnosis, it could look different and different things will be tricky. We think of the diagnosis as a compass. A general overview can be helpful, but not completely essential. We take the approach of underlying principles. can help teachers understand the why behind tricky behaviors across diagnoses. You don't need to be an expert in each diagnosis. Many students with these diagnoses have a need for movement, difficulty with impulse control. They have a hard time getting started with tasks or staying on track. They might have challenges with working memory. When classrooms are designed proactively to support these areas, they become less of an issue. We can pay attention to the child in front of us, tune into the child that's in front of us, and look at them as a person, as opposed to a clinical diagnosis, the nuance and details and the huge amount and body of information that is out there that is really just beyond the scope of the individual teacher in the classroom. The overwhelm can also come from the fact that we have 20 students in the class and 18 IEPs. Where do I start? How can I have 18 different approaches? So if our classrooms are geared in a way where we're allowing for accommodations for many of these different needs that could apply across various students, various diagnoses, getting ourselves ahead of the game before digging into the nitty-gritty and the intense detail of each diagnosis and each individual.
We will get into IEPs in a moment, but you outlined the teacher's role beautifully. As a teacher, it's not our job to offer up a diagnosis, to make suggestions about a diagnosis from a child's behaviour. It's our job to meet with parents and help them go to the people that can help them with those areas. But I've seen it in schools many times with friends, colleagues and their children, or people that I've worked with, where things are thrown around without official diagnosis or official expert. And that can be dangerous. Your idea of looking at it as a compass to lead yourself in the right direction is a great way to think about it.
From the psychology and diagnosis perspective, is considering diagnoses is how difficulties are showing up. A person will be experiencing less difficulties if there's a good fit between the person's needs and what the environment's providing. Some of the things that you might think are typical of certain presentations, we talked about impulsivity, difficulty getting started, staying on task. If these needs are met in the classroom, you won't necessarily see some of these difficulties. Also with autism, some of the things that we think of as typical autistic behaviours are actually now being better understood as distress behaviours. When needs aren't met, you'll see those behaviours. But if they are in an environment where there's this proactive meeting of needs and not experiencing difficulty, you won't see those behaviours. This is what I see in presentations or diagnoses, and what they need may not be true of the child, particularly if there's proactive addressing of their needs.
Interesting. We often say children who have autism flap. Are you saying that could be a sign of distress?
Flapping could be happiness, excitement, or positive emotions. Some repetitive body movements could be a way of self-soothing. If an individual is having their needs met, there's less need for that self-soothing. Or we talked about impulsivity in ADHD. If they're engaged and doing something meaningful to them, you'll see less of that because they'll be focused.
We've spoken about what a child needs is more than the label that they have. Can you share how teachers can build skills to identify and respond to students' needs proactively?
This can really be broken down into a few steps. Maybe Lianne will start with the psychology and I'll follow up with practical ways that we can actually do this.
It can feel overwhelming. How do I work out what each student needs? I need to predict exactly what's going to happen. And coming back to the diagnoses, I really need to know every strategy that a child with this particular presentation might need. But the first thing that we've also touched on already is that there's always variability, firstly, between different students with the same diagnosis, but also even within the same child, there will be variability. This is a concept called fluctuating capacity. It applies to everyone, but even more to neurodivergent individuals. Some days they'll be doing things easily, and the next day will be trickier. One day it works and the next it doesn't because their capacity fluctuates. Taking away that pressure of needing to know exactly what each student needs and moving to a whole classroom approach where needs can be met in a flexible, choice-based way is a good overarching approach.
Yeah. allowing for that flexibility. A great frame of mind is trying to be objective, which is tricky because teachers can take behaviors personally. It feels like a rejection of your planning or your effort when things don't go well.
Yeah.
And that can impact your desire to plan again for tomorrow or to put effort into differentiation and options. Hopefully, we'll talk about how we can provide options without overwhelm for teachers.
Yeah.
If we see this behavior as not a reflection of ourselves and not a reflection of our capacity as a teacher or whether we're doing a good job, and rather just a means of which student is communicating their needs, removing that emotion and being more objective is a real key to see the forest from the trees and really see what's going on in front of you. A great way to do this is to look for patterns in the student's behavior. Firstly, if you step back, objectively look at what's going on for an individual student, you might notice that after recess, that student struggles to regulate. But beyond that, when you start seeing patterns, it takes the personal feeling out of the equation. Many teachers have reported back when I say, okay, let's look for patterns and give strategies with the key goal of noticing what's difficult for the student, what we can accommodate. A real benefit of that strategy is that teachers come to me and say, when I stood back and I looked at this behavior objectively, completely took me out of the equation and made the behavior less personal. And I was able to look at it objectively, intellectually, as opposed to emotionally. And that really empowered me in my interactions with the students and made it just far more simple to engage in a meaningful way in trying to find solutions to support the student. So it's a wonderful byproduct for teachers in objectifying that behavior and looking at it more factually as opposed to emotionally.
Great lesson for teaching in general. Look at
Yeah.
things factually over emotionally, like when your principal asks you to do something.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about examples of proactive accommodations we could build into classroom routines.
Yeah, we've spoken about being flexible and allowing for different student needs. If we have flexibility built in from the outset, it can be empowering for students. Avoid behaviors proactively. One practical way of bringing flexibility into the classroom is keeping your eye on the goal. What is my learning goal in this lesson? Break it down into 3 components. Am I trying to teach content or skills? Is it the process that's very important here in the lesson? The process of learning? Or is it the product I'm asking the child to produce? Once you identify what the focus in that particular lesson is, it helps identify where we can be flexible. If the main focus of this lesson is content and skills, process and product are far less important. It's less important if the child produces the work as a speech, as a written work, as a creative animation, for example. And so we can say these are the essential content and skills. It can be done with a different process and product. Allowing for that choice in learning can be empowering for students. You can bring movement into it. It could be that you have children who need to move and there can be standing desks available proactively, not as a reaction to negative behavior, how your classroom runs. Students who prefer to work in pairs and enjoy that social interaction. And you have some students who the noise and that interaction is completely exhausting for, and they can have noise cancelling earphones while they're working because you've identified your teaching content and skills. And if we have those proactive accommodations built in before we even start, we're accommodating far broader range of students without singling out, Sam, you get to stand, and Sally, you get to choose. It doesn't have to be that way. It eliminates the shame. Your classroom's already set up with option and choice. That really is a great first step teachers can make to bring accommodations into their classroom without needing to know individual diagnoses of all the students in the room.
When choice is given, it's not just about accommodating difficulties. It's also giving an opportunity to show strengths. If the process is what's important, they can choose the topic. They've got to learn how to write a narrative. They can choose what they write it about, then gives them opportunity to share about their interests. It gives them the chance, if they're artistic, and the content's the focus, to show their artistic skills. So it's not just about meeting deficits, but it's also about giving opportunities to display strengths.
Yes, we've got an Instagram post that said, when you give students choices, you hear their voices. And I think that really encapsulates what you're saying, because we want to hear all students' voices, and it's important to give them choice in their learning. This can start at the very beginning, like kindergarten.
Absolutely. Yeah, maybe more than ever in kindergarten. There's people coming in so overwhelmed by all the learning they have to do in a day. That choice can be so empowering.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of voices, Can we
Yeah.
dive into IEPs, the voice of the teacher written in conjunction with parents? Let's talk about IEPs. Teachers, please don't turn the podcast off here. We're going to talk about some really practical ways that you can write these IEPs. The ladies have some wonderful ideas. Let's talk about practical challenges teachers face when implementing them from day to day. I've taught classes, had IEPs that I've written with our special needs teacher in conjunction with the parents. We get back into the classroom, and it is not practical to actually put these things into practice when I've got 30 kids in the class.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked all the teachers to stay. I can
Oh,
leave the room, right? Just
isn't
say
it?
the IEP word. And Ash, this comes to the crux of mine and Leanne's collaboration and how we started doing the work we do together. We would always bounce ideas off each other. I would call Leanne and say, I have a child in my class who's struggling. This is what I'm seeing. What do you think I should do? And she'd say, why don't you try X, Y, and Z? And say, sounds like a lovely idea for somebody who's working one-on-one.
Yeah.
I've got a classroom of students in front of me, and we would brainstorm how we could make it practical. And she'd call and say, I've spent so long making these amazing recommendations for students, and I'm not seeing the school or teacher implementing. Sometimes I could shed light on how that can be tricky for a teacher with so many students. The first obstacle is the difference between theory and reality for the teacher. We can sit with professionals and parents and dream up the greatest plans, but how often is that practical? Are the plans achievable for the teacher? That's step number one, making sure we're not trying to create 20 different lesson plans for each individual. It's unachievable, it's not practical. Leaning on what we've discussed in the podcast, bringing a broad range of accommodations into the classroom is a great first step, not to the need for individual care, but for the teacher to feel they have to have 20 different scenarios for each child. IEPs thoughtfully prepared with the collaboration of the family and the student, where possible, can be a wonderful resource, so long as it's not generic, it's not losing sight of the child and teacher. If parent, child, and teacher can come together and collaborate to build a plan that's really practical for all parties, keeping the teacher in mind as well, not dismissing the limitations, the restrictions, the reality in front of the teacher, then it could be something the teacher might lean on more willingly and readily. It's just something that's emailed around to teachers and here's the IEP, see what you can do with this. And it's not practical, it's not realistic, it's not fair to expect a teacher to just receive this document and say, let's go, I'm going to implement all these strategies that I've had absolutely no input in, and really feel completely overwhelmed in being able to execute them. It's essential that all parties engaging with the plan have the opportunity to have input.
Back when I first started teaching, you might only have 1 or 2 students with an IEP, which is short for individual education plan for anyone who's listening that is unsure or listening from overseas.
In some states, it's an ILP for anyone who's having an aha moment.
What is
individual learning plan.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, some of the other things that can be challenging about an IEP is sometimes there can be this list of strategies and the teacher has found a way to do them and then the kid refuses. I'm not doing that.
Yes.
And there can be a few reasons. Firstly, it can be that it's a generic IEP that's been developed because this is what kids with this diagnosis need, but actually it's not specific to the child. It often also is because the child doesn't want to stand out. They don't want to be different. They don't want to be seen as having difficulties that need to be supported. Creating a culture where there are choices and options available, that there isn't shame in saying, right now I'm going to choose the quiet task, or I need to move, so I'm going to walk over to that class where the kids are at standing desks. This task is going to work best with my capacity today. When we talked about fluctuating capacity, some recommendations are needed some days and not others, depending on how a kid's showing up that day. And again, if it's not done in a black and white, this is what I've been told to do, and this is what I'm going to do, away, but rather this is open to everyone and you can access it as and when you need, it makes it more doable and overcomes that challenge of a child not wanting to do it and then a teacher feeling stuck.
So if we're looking at the IEP, so could we look at it like a menu? We've got a list of accommodations. Some may apply some days and not others, or am I off track?
Part of what Lisa was saying is there are general underlying principles. In our course, we spend a bit of time unpacking executive functioning, what that looks like. Executive functioning differences is something that you will often see in kids who do have IEPs and who need support, and being able to design the classroom in a way where there's visual and verbal information paired. So you tell the class something and put it on the board.
Yeah.
Where there's external timekeeping, chunking of tasks into manageable parts, all done proactively. We have a resource available that goes through some of those things. A lot of them are unifying principles that underlie a lot of IPs. Just knowing those underlying things can be helpful rather than feeling like you need to have read and memorized each of the 10 recommendations in each of the 18 IPs in your classes.
You're talking teacher language there, because they're nodding their heads going, yes, that is my life and I can't keep up. That resource is your 15 strategies to accommodate different learning needs in the classroom. We will link that in the show notes. That's a freebie, everybody. So we'll make sure that's linked in the show notes to get access. Do you think teachers sometimes over-rely on IEPs as a tool?
It could be that teachers feel overwhelmed and unsure where to turn, that they look to the IEP as a box ticking exercise. Have I referenced the IEP? Did I use the listed strategies without seeing the individual in front of them? But for the most part, teachers come into this profession because they care for children, they're passionate, they have values which lead them in the direction of nurturing and caring for the individual. And so even when teachers are leaning heavily on the IEP, it's from a place of really not knowing where else to turn. They've been offered support, try it and move on. So many demands for teachers at the moment. That administrative role is bigger than ever. The need to communicate with home, extra clubs, paperwork goes on. And it could be that a teacher says, referenced IEP, tick, because there are only so many hours in a day. This can be limiting if an IEP wasn't designed collaboratively.
Yeah. If the only time teachers are bringing in accommodations or offering choice or variation is for this particular student who has this particular thing recording their IEP, then a lot of kids' needs will be missed. Diagnosis isn't accessible to everyone. It's tricky in Australia to get access to that. Not every kid who has different needs is necessarily obvious within the classroom. They could be very good at masking their needs. They could be very compliant, fly under the radar. Using the IEP alone to say student X needs these 3 things rather than let's offer flexibility to the whole class can cause more difficulties. When students' needs aren't met, you see challenging classroom dynamics and behaviours. Using the IEP alone will miss out on supporting some students who need it.
I'm glad you brought that up. Let's dive into the teacher-parent dynamic now, and I'm going to make a confession that out of all of my years of teaching, and I've written many a IEP, I have never had the student sit, maybe actually I have now I think about it. Maybe once I've had a student sit in to write that IEP with parents and then some sort of specialist teacher as well. Let's talk about the parent-teacher dynamic, because we want to be able to write them together. We want to be able to get it right for a child. How can parents and teachers work more as collaborators in this process?
Yeah, I think that is completely essential to the support of these kids. Parents get called in when a teacher's at breaking point or things have gone badly, and a teacher will reach out to the parent because they are unsure what to do next. That can come across to a parent as a complaint. Sometimes it is a complaint. I've done my thing now, you sort out your child because I don't even know what to do anymore. I may have been the parent on the receiving end of that call. Typically, parents do put up defenses because the mama bear comes out and says, what are you saying about my child? My child's wonderful. Do you know all the things they're good at? And instantly you have this relationship or dynamic that is adversarial rather than collaborative. That is the first step in the wrong direction in support of the child. If we could change this script to, hi, mother or father of said child, I've noticed your child's having difficulty in class and I'd really like to support them, to help them have the best experience. And I'm wondering if you'd be available to work together with me so we can figure out what's going on and best support your child. Is there a time? Can we bring the child into the conversation So the three of us can sit down as a team and work against the problem. Collaboration is powerful because immediately you don't have two problems, a parent and a child. We're all on the same team. It's extremely empowering for the teacher and extremely empowering for the student. The student will hear at home, wow, what a wonderful teacher you have who wants to support you, as opposed to, oh, the teacher called again, landing in a blow up between parent and child usually, because while the parent might be defensive towards the teacher, when that child gets home, they're probably going to face the music too. And so now you have, as opposed to having this three-way conflict, parent and teacher and child, all of a sudden we're all on the same team and we're collaborating against the problem. We're trying to solve this problem together. And the ball is in the court of the teacher to frame it that way. If the teacher can frame the conversation that way, immediately you have allies on your team and you're empowered to really support this child. The child's hearing positive messaging from the parent at home. The parent respects the teacher. That will instantly lead the child along the path of respecting the teacher. We've already jumped over many obstacles before we've even sat down to address the problem, setting this up for success.
Teamwork makes the dream work. I was lucky in my early career that I had some really fantastic parents that were proactive themselves. And these parents came to me and said, can we sit down for a meeting in this first week to discuss the needs of my child because of A, B, and C. And yes, that's a really busy time for teachers, but I was so grateful for parents who did that, because then I was able to hear what they had to say and set off on the right foot from the get-go, set off as a team from the get-go. And that actually taught me for many years onwards, when I got a new group of students and the handover and found out about the students, you picked out those ones that you thought, great, I need to connect with those parents right off the bat. I need to make sure we're starting off on the right foot.
Credit to you as the teacher, because it could be that a teacher could feel attacked or, well, don't tell me how to do my job. If we acknowledge the power in collaboration, you're coming in on one chapter in the middle of the whole story where the parent's been with this child from the beginning.
Yeah.
Parents really give us so much insight into their child, and they'll be more willing if they see you as a collaborator. They'll give you information and insights helpful in understanding their child.
It takes away trial and error. You could spend trialing different things to find the last strategy works. But if you're connecting with the parent and they say, that's not going to work for my child, you go, great, we'll put that to the side. What does work?
It's nothing more powerful than that collaboration.
If a teacher's feeling overwhelmed, where's a good place to start? What's one mindset shift or small action that could make a big difference?
Okay, one. Our discussion of the approach that the child's not giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time. See that behavior objectively as not an attack on you. Ross Green says all kids want to do well. If they're not doing well, something's getting in their way. If we can step back and figure out what's getting in the child's way, as opposed to responding with punishments or consequences that are not getting that child the skills they need, that is the greatest mind shift for teachers in approaching difficult behavior in a proactive rather than a reactive way. I bet Lianne also wants a chance to say one thing.
But it's going to add up to two things, but we're okay with that.
Right.
Get us up, Lianne.
100%. Take that weight of responsibility off the teacher. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to have all the answers. And the more you can bring in the child, their family, other support people in to try and work out how to move forward when things are tricky, it's actually a sign of professional strength. It's not a weakness when you build a team around you and when you lean on others.
Yeah, I think about if you were a parent, if anyone's listening to this and you're not a parent, or if you are, put yourself in their shoes, what would you want for your child? You would love that team. I know as a parent, 2 heads is better than one. One of my kids has 2 teachers this year, and he was having a couple of troubles at school socially. So I went in for a meeting with the teacher that teaches 3 days a week, and he actually invited that other teacher to come in and sit with us. And I was so impressed by that, because she came up with ideas that he didn't have. And he came up with ideas I hadn't thought of. And I was like, this is really cool. Look at these 3 adults working together for my child. It can work in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, that feeling of I can't admit I don't know everything can get in the way. Saying to teachers, it's okay. It's right. Lean on the people around you. And that's great.
Yeah. Okay, so ladies, we've got a little tradition that we're started at the podcast where our guest before you has left a question for you to answer, a mystery question. Here we go. I'm going to let you both answer. If someone told you that in 5 years you would be dead, What would you change about your life? This doesn't have to be teaching related if you don't want it to be.
That's a big 5 years. I think I would make it my mission to reach and support as many kids as I could in a meaningful way. Forget the box ticking, just really with heart and meaning. I put my own 5 kids at the top of that list, giving them the supports they need to do well, regardless of what the system or boxes demand.
You have kept it quiet that you have 5 children of your own until this moment of the podcast.
Yeah. Sorry, not deliberate.
Wowza. I would have asked you so many more questions. Once we get off, I'm going to ask you about having 5 kids. Lianne, you have lots of kids too?
I have 4.
If someone told you in 5 years you're not going to be here, what would you change?
Yeah, I think when you talk about mortality, it would make you want to make sure that your time is really in line with your values and what's important to you, and not getting caught up in the small, unimportant stuff, and you're keeping your eye on what really matters. I'd hope that I could do that, but 5 years is a long time to keep that in mind. We're also human, and the traffic jams will still get you frustrated and you'll find yourself shouting at your kids. But yeah, just that realignment of going, am I living in line with what's important? Yeah, I guess we actually talk about values quite a bit. It's one of my favorite psychology approaches. In our course, we talk about values, living your values and connecting to your values at work, and how that really enriches it and makes it meaningful and purposeful. So yeah, extending that, I guess.
I think I would be the same. Lianne, Lisa, you have been brilliant in this episode. Before we go, I want to know about the freebie that the teachers can grab at the end of this podcast. So I'm going to link the freebie in the show notes, 15 strategies to accommodate different learning needs. How can the teachers access it, and how can they connect with you?
They can hop onto our website, link in the show notes, elevatededucators.com.au. The freebie is available there or on our socials. And really, in that freebie, it follows our approach, which aims to take the overwhelm off teachers. The guide moves from theory to practice. All the strategies are easy to implement, practical, to use in a busy classroom right away without much thought, and can make really a huge shift in the classroom dynamic that we've discussed today, and can make really a huge shift in the classroom dynamic. It allows you to put all of this into place, offering choice, proactive regulation opportunities, easily available in your classroom without much thought or effort. It can be downloaded from our website or Instagram page.
Amazing. Your Instagram page is?
Elevated Educators.
We will link that in the show notes. That freebie is a great supplement to our episode today, because it's going to give some practical ideas teachers can pick and choose from, find what they may be already doing really well in their classroom, as well as picking up some other really good ideas. Ladies, you are a powerful team. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been great to share these ideas with you guys.
As Lianne and Lisa shared, it's not about doing everything. It's about doing something that helps a child feel seen and supported in your classroom. Don't miss the opportunity to grab their freebie 15 strategies to accommodate different learning needs in your classroom. Is going to be so helpful. I am going to go and download it now. And without much further ado, there are rainbows ahead, my friend, and together we're unstoppable.